Hello and welcome to the third broadcast of Nerdflix. Today's most excellent topic, Bill and Ted.
Now, a motion picture so grand, so magnificent, and so vast, it spans 7,000 years.
No way! Yes way!
But it starts with Bill.
I'm Bill S. Preston!
Who was Joan of Arc?
And Ted.
Noah's wife? We're in danger of flunking most heinously tomorrow.
A force from the future.
Can we go anywhere we want at any time?
You can do anything you want.
Is putting history at their fingertips.
Let's reach out and touch someone.
They're traveling through time.
How's it going, Royal Ugly Dudes?
Put them in the Iron Maiden.
Excellent!
Execute them.
Bogus.
I have a feeling we're about to embark upon a most unprecedented expedition.
Once they made history.
I must see to it that you die.
Now, they are history. Bill and Ted are dead.
Welcome to hell.
It's the Grim Reaper, dude. How's it hanging, Death?
But they're having one hell of a time.
This is not what I expected this place to look like at all. We got totally lied to by our album covers, man.
25 years ago, you played a concert in front of the entire world. 1 month ago, you played in Barstow, California for 40 people, most of whom were there for $2 taco night. Bill and Ted, what have you got to say for yourselves?
Be excellent to each other. And party on, dudes.
You were supposed to unite the world and save reality as we know it.
Bill, we've spent our whole life trying to write the song that will unite the world. Why can't we just go to the future when we have written it?
Whoa! Take it from ourselves.
But isn't that stealing?
How is that stealing if we're stealing it from ourselves, dude?
Bill and Ted are really just two crazy 80s dudes who time travel around in a phone booth. They've had 3 movies. We'll start by talking about their first movie, Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure. Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure is about 2 teenagers named Bill and Ted who are not the brightest people, and they're in danger of flunking history and flunking high school, and they really need to get a good grade on their upcoming tests. And what's a better way to learn about history than experiencing it by time traveling? Because Bill and Ted are destined to unite the world and become like these super people of the future. And so the super people of the future send a character named Rufus to help them get an A on their presentation so that they don't flunk history most heinously. Throughout the movie, they meet up with Billy the Kid, Socrates, or as they say, Socrates, Napoleon, Genghis Khan, Sigmund Freud, Joan of Arc, and a bunch of other cool historical people. At the end of the movie, spoiler alert, they totally aced their presentation, and no one seems to notice that they just brought historical figures back from the past. They just go with it, I guess. Bill and Ted was actually created in a improv group. The writers of the movie, when they were kids, they started an improv group, just a small one with some other kids, and they created a skit about 2 guys talking about history who don't know anything about history. And actually the original skit was Bill and Ted and Bob. There was a 3rd character named Bob, who obviously was never in the movies, but the movie was almost Bill, Ted, and Bob's Excellent Adventure. Bill and Ted not only had 3 movies, they had comic books and books. They had a cereal at one point. They had a cartoon called Bill and Ted's Adventures, which lasted 2 seasons, and then they had a live-action show of the same name that featured none of the original cast and only lasted 7 episodes. Now, you can find a full episode or 2 on YouTube. I watched one. It really isn't that good. Like I said, not the original cast. And it's just really kind of cheesy and definitely not as good as the movies. But it's fun to check out. And if you're a Bill and Ted fan, it's cool to watch and see. And so you check that out if you want. But it's weird. Like I said, it only lasted 7 episodes. Probably because it sucked. But they did have a live action show. The original script was written in 4 days by hand. The writers met up at a coffee shop and wrote it only in 4 days. And they did it all by hand in a notebook. Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventures original production company actually went bankrupt when they were making the movie. And actually, the movie almost went straight to cable. It was almost a TV movie. And obviously, it would have not have done as well and been as popular as it is today. But luckily, Orion Pictures picked it up, and they didn't become a cable TV movie. The original idea for their time machine was actually a time machine van instead of the phone booth we all know. And the van seemed like a good idea until they realized that it was very close to ripping off Back to the Future's DeLorean, which is another really good time travel trilogy. So if you haven't seen any of those, I recommend checking those out. But they thought a van would be way too close to Back to the Future's DeLorean, so they switched it to a phone booth. And obviously, a phone booth's similarity to Doctor Who's The TARDIS didn't seem to concern them. We all know Keanu Reeves is playing Ted and Alex Winter is playing Bill. And you can't imagine anyone else playing them, except for you can because the live-action show wasn't them. But in the movies that we all know, you can't imagine anyone else playing Bill and Ted. Well, actually, many people auditioned for the role of Bill and Ted. But originally, both actors auditioned for the opposite role, which means Reeves auditioned for Bill and Winter auditioned for Ted. So imagine the movie you know, but with the actors playing their opposite character. In 1991, Bill and Ted got a video game called Bill and Ted's Most Excellent Video Game. And Nintendo, to promote the game, they raffled off the original phone booth used in the movies. And some Nintendo player out there must have won it and maybe still has it today. But Nintendo literally raffled off the original used in the movie phone booth to just some Nintendo player to promote their video game. After the first movie, Bill and Ted got a sequel, Bill and Ted's Bogus Journey, in which Bill and Ted literally die. And they go through crazy adventures. They meet the Grim Reaper and they team up with him and he ends up being part of Wild Stallions. And it's just as goofy and as fun as the first movie, if not better. It's very good. It's different. It has really different tone than the first movie, so it's a fresh new idea and it's a fresh new plot, and it's not too much like the first one. Because I believe I've mentioned in my last podcast that I don't like movie sequels that are too much like the first one. You need to have a difference, but they need to be connected somehow. And Bill and Ted's Bogus Journey did just that, and it was really good. Some interesting things about Bill and Ted's Bogus Journey is actually in the opening scene of the movie, we see in the future Bill and Ted Academy, which is all the kids of the future are going to learn about music in Bill and Ted. And actually, the same set used for Bill and Ted Academy was also used for Starfleet Academy in Star Trek Voyager. Now let's talk about their third movie, Bill and Ted Face the Music. I was so excited for this when it came out because it was the only Bill and Ted movie I was alive to see the release. And it came out last year in 2020 in August, I believe. It went straight to home because obviously theaters weren't open. And it was a really good movie, though it was a lot different than the first two. obviously, Bill and Ted were adults now, and they actually had 2 daughters. But it was a really good movie. And I really liked it just as much as I liked the first 3. And I thought it was really nice, and that they did a good job on it. And it was a little late. I mean, it's a huge gap between Bogus Journey and Face the Music, but it was worth it. It was a really good movie. The idea for Bill and Ted Face the Music has actually been hovering around since the early 2000s. So that's almost 2 decades it took to make this movie a reality, which is crazy. And obviously, if it happened when they first got the idea, there wouldn't have been that much of a gap between Bogus Journey and Face the Music. And Bill and Ted wouldn't have been the older adults they were if they were to do it then. And the movie could have turned out a lot different. The original idea actually for Bill and Ted Face the Music was to have Bill and Ted almost playing the role of Rufus, going back in time to help some 2 spunky teenagers similar to Bill and Ted pass their history test and start a band. And it would have been weird because it would have been almost a remake, but with Bill and Ted playing Rufus. And I like the way they went with the movie, and I'm glad they didn't go that way, because that would have been weird. I don't think a lot of people would have liked it as much. Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure made $40.5 million in box office. Bill and Ted's Bogus Journey made $38 million in box office. And Bill and Ted Face the Music made $38.2 million, which means that Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure made the most out of all 3. It's kind of hard to beat the original. Each time you make a sequel, it kind of doesn't do as good each sequel you make. And, but with Bill and Ted Face the Music coming in second, which is surprising because Bill and Ted Face the Music came out in the summer of 2020 when theaters weren't even open. It was going straight to home. And somehow it made more than Bill and Ted's Bogus Journey did, which is interesting. That's crazy how they managed to pull that off, because actually Disney's Onward, which was released around the same time, actually was one of the worst money-making Pixar movies of all time, because it was released in the middle of a pandemic and there was no theaters for it to go to. And since it went straight to Disney Plus, you could only watch it if you had Disney Plus. And so it's surprising to me that Bill and Ted Face the Music actually made a lot than other movies released in that time, and making more than Bill and Ted's Bogus Journey, coming in second to Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure. One last thing I do want to talk about is I did design my own nerdflix logo. I designed it myself, like I said. I don't know how often I'd use the logo. I just thought it'd be cool to have a logo. Here it is. See what you think. The lettering, I was inspired by the cover of Ready Player 2. The lettering is very similar. It was a good book. There's our Nerdflix logo. That is it for this week's Nerdflix broadcast. I hope you enjoyed it. I will see you next week on Nerdflix, and until then, be excellent to each other, and party on, dudes.
Ladies and gentlemen, we've been to the past. We've been to the future. We've been all around the afterlife. And you know, Ted, the best place to be is here. The best time to be is now. And all we can say is, let's roll!